First of all, thank you for that introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here at this interesting and important event. And I'd like to thank University of Waterloo for hosting this event. So I think we would all agree that geothermal, GeoExchange has a role to play in the low carbon economy, and there are different pieces of the puzzle that need to be put together. And we've heard from various speakers on each of the pieces. And maybe I'd like to share my view on the financing side of it. And as CoPower, we provide financing for clean tech projects in Canada and the US in various technologies, in energy generation and in energy efficiency. But maybe perhaps digging deeper into that, I'd like to kind of share my own personal story. I've always been an advocate for sustainability. During my research at Cambridge, launched an energy awareness campaign targeting retailers. So the picture that you see in the middle top is a sticker that stores throughout the UK now use to say we're open and we're saving energy. Also spent a number of years at Arab, which is a British engineering consultancy, and then later with Mitsui doing clean tech VC in London, England. Worked on some interesting projects, the driverless pod that you see on the bottom middle, not as sexy as the Google car, but its capabilities are pretty impressive. And then also launched the first wireless charging electric bus project that you see here with a wireless charger that's embedded into the road. And I felt that it was a time that there was a lot happening in Canada and wanted to come back, so hence I made the step and came back here and joined CoPower. In today's presentation, I'd like to spend a bit of time talking about the bigger picture, the key energy trends, some of the challenges that we see in distributed energy sources, and take time to talk about clean energy financing and share our view of how we look at it and what we see we can do to make projects grow. We've all seen charts like this. The research is pretty clear, but apart from looking at graphs like this, I think it's better just to turn on the TV and see what's happening. We would, I think, all agree that something is happening with our planet, and global warming could contribute to part or maybe the most important bit of that. In terms of what is causing these emissions, we see that energy generation, when we combine electricity, heat, and transport, that's about 2/3. So from a greenhouse gas reduction point of view, those are the domains that we want to target. And there is action that's taking place. If we look at the future of our energy generation, we'd like to think it's going to be more renewable and less dirty sources. And partly because of technology as well. You look at prices coming down and more projects being deployed. Now, that also makes the market more intense, and there are different drivers around, for example, the solar market, which I won't get into now, but at least the overall direction is in the right way. So with distributed energy sources, I mean, the key trends that we see is declining cost of green technologies, the cost on carbon, whether it's the cap and trade program. I think they still have yet to mature, and we're kind of keeping an eye out on that, and we don't want to base our whole model on those types of initiatives that are announced. Energy storage, especially the way that it's complementary with some of the renewable technologies, we find that it's key. It does bring up the capex of projects, but it de-risks certain elements of it. Smart buildings, walking around, I see more and more LEED, platinum certified buildings, and with old buildings as well. There's a lot of ESCOs, energy efficiency companies that are approaching building owners with potential solutions. And with such a low payback for some of the easy ones, it's almost a no-brainer. And electrification of transport, I won't delve into it, but apart from passenger cars, trucks, buses, they do a significant amount of mileage every single day. So I think that's also going to be an industry that's going to be more and more important. And the future of our kind of energy supply, again, without getting into details, it's going to be much more complex. The way that we see it is software is going to be a key enabler. You might have heard of virtual power plants being quite prevalent in particularly Germany. There's different companies that are growing steadily. They aggregate variable renewable sources and they're able to provide it to the ones that need it, or they can sell it into the market. And you would think it's a whole big operation. I've seen their operations room. It's 15 software engineers with a couple of management. So it's really impressive what these virtual power plant companies are doing. So they're, stepping back and having, talked about the context, I'd like to share a bit of the story about CoPower. There were two main challenges that we saw in the market, and we thought there was some room that we could play there. So with large infoscale projects, they use project financing to lower the risk for people that want to come into play. And we were seeing that for clean energy projects that weren't really the case, especially aggregating clean energy projects in a similar fashion was not happening, and it was making it less appealing for investors. The second challenge was, if there was a project that was being developed, if it was 50 million, 30 million, great. You could go to the banks and they would listen to you. But what if it's only 1 million or 500,000? Then where does the financing come from? Of course, there are government institutions that are willing to lend a helping hand, but some of those also come in with a term that says you need private financing as well. And we thought, with those two challenges, we need to think about how we can do the project finance structure, yet capture these smaller projects and get projects off the ground in Canada. And that was the main 2 points that we had going into creation of CoPower. But where does the money come from? So, we created something called the green bond for the retail investment market, which is a huge market. So individuals could say, well, I want to be investing in projects that lower greenhouse gas emissions and also make Canada as part a low carbon economy. So we wanted to allow this, and that needed a creation of a platform. And the size of the retail investment market is huge. We spoke 7 out of 10 investors that describe themselves, they want to do something sustainable. They want to get into impact investing, but they didn't know how. And, less than 5% have done anything about it, and because maybe there really wasn't a platform there. So the idea was, okay, on the left-hand side, we could have investors that go onto an online platform. They can choose, the minimum is 5,000. They could decide to invest in clean tech projects and get a fixed return over 5 years. That's great. But then we realize institutions also want to get involved. So we have institutions, large institutions like Van City, which is the largest credit union in Canada with 20 billion. They wanted to get involved. So we started generating a bit of traction to, fill our bucket of funds. And then on the right-hand side, we wanted to invest into clean energy projects per se. So I say projects, not firms, because we're not a VC. We like to come in on the debt, and if we really like it, we might make introductions to bring the equity, but we'll get to that on this slide. Usually the types of projects that we come across, they have the equity play, so the project developer is usually there. There might be a couple other individuals that really believe in the project coming in on the equity side, and CoPower is able to provide debt financing. usually between 60 to 80% of the project. Now, based on what stage the project's at, has there been no work, then it would be more construction. Is it short term, or has it been established like a solar fit project that's already operational? It would be a long-term financing. So we would, based on the stage, we would decide what type of financing is required. And there's been a lot of projects that have come kind of our way. If you just take a look at it, you'll see solar projects have dominated what we have received and also what we have looked at. And it's mainly because the FIT contracts, again, our remit is both Canada and the US. Biomass, CHP, is large. Geothermal, we've made one investment in a GeoExchange project, which I will talk on the second part of my presentation. So this gives you a flavor of the technology. It's not about the technology itself, it's more about the structure. So we have about 13 million assets under management right now. Just to give you a flavor of the projects that we have provided financing to. It's mainly been in Canada, and we're really proud to say that, because our investors are also based in Canada. So they'd love to feel that the projects they invest to, end up, coming up on their backyard. The Harbourfront energy efficiency, which was about LED, some solar. Most of our projects so far has been LED and solar, with the exception of the project on the very right, which is the GeoExchange project in Quebec, which we provided $1 million in financing to. And we have this term saying win-win-win, triple win. It's got to be a win for the environment. That's first and foremost. So any type of project that we would seek to finance, the first question that gets asked is, does it have greenhouse gas reductions based on the status quo? Because on a quarterly basis, we report back to our investors, which are individual investors and institutional investors, on the amount of carbon dioxide that was saved. The other win is for the project developers. So what is the best type of financing that we can provide? Can we be competitive to make the project still operate and not have to kill the project, but we make our money? So that's obviously not a win. And obviously we have certain risk criteria that we have to consider for each individual project. So is the technology proven? To give a more concrete example, with GeoExchange, we were very interested in this domain, so I'd like to share the story about our first investment in GeoExchange. So geothermal used in over 16,000 homes across Canada. We all know the dynamics of how it works. The problem was that it can be expensive, and in most cases, homeowners need to install and purchase the geothermal or GeoExchange systems outright, which can cost up to $30,000. Now, we wanted to kind of think about a new business model. So we worked with a company called Marmot Energies. So instead of getting the homeowner to pay $30,000, why don't we structure a mechanism and we provide financing to get these installations into the ground, they're working, and they pay a fixed monthly fee, which is starting to look like a project finance structure just for any bridge or any other type of large infrastructure project. And maybe I'd like to spend quite a bit of time on the investment criteria, because ideally what we want to do is get more projects off the ground. So in a very transparent way, I'll kind of walk you through how we assess a project. So focusing on the first element, we try to see what is the technology. If it's a proven technology that's been around, that's great. We don't think boring is bad. We think boring is good. If it's a technology that's being applied in a different way, we would still definitely consider that. In this case, we knew that it was a GeoExchange project with the heat pump being installed in the basement of these homeowners, and there was 39 homeowners in the greater Montreal area. That was where the project was taking place. We would look at the team, and Marmot Energies had been around for since 2013, so a relatively new company, but a great traction record. In any type of project, whether it's geothermal, GeoExchange, or any technology, we understand the warranties and insurance that are around that. Then it's about counterparties. So in the end, who will be providing the capital that allows the capex to be paid back? It's in some cases a single entity, a private sector, a large institution that has maybe a AAA grade rating. That's great. But also in this case, it wasn't the case. It was the homeowners, as I said, it was a number of homeowners, and that was in a way diversified our risk. So we liked the structure of that. If it's a solar project, I mean, a purchase power agreement, that's great from the government. We would, absolutely love to see that in a project. And about understanding the revenue model. So in the model, what are some of the assumptions? Is it backed by certain government revenues that might not be there in a couple of years? So those are some of the things that we would ask. Security-wise, just like any kind of investment firm, we would want to see some step-in rights for any reason. If the borrower were to default, or if the project doesn't go, can we somehow step in and without any interruption to the actual operational project still provide the service to the homeowner? So could we get another O&M party to go and run with the project? And the last bit is about structure, and perhaps this is one of the most key bits of how we view investments. In a project finance structure, we usually like to see a special purpose company that is formed. So we never would provide the debt to a certain company. We would get that company to maybe jointly create a special purpose company, a separate entity that we would provide the loan to. That entity would have maybe the equity from the project developer, and also the cash flows in to the project would be brought into that special purpose company, and those would be backed by the assets. And I wanted to kind of walk you through this because, again, to reiterate, we want to get more and more projects off the ground, and a lot of projects come our way, and sometimes, they've gotten 3 of these and they need support in one, and in that point in time, we would kind of hold hands and just walk them through, making sure that they have the 4th element in place. And we've done that with a couple of companies, changing their business model. So with the GeoExchange project, we were quite happy. It took a bit of time to get and make sure that those 4 criteria were met. But in May earlier this year, we were able to provide the $1 million in project financing. And our mission is to continue to do more geothermal, GeoExchange in Canada, because we believe that it's actually a great technology that can be financed. So in terms of what's next, I mean, as I mentioned, we'll continue to support the growth. In the meantime, we're looking at various technologies, solar and wind, other types of renewables. Energy efficiency is an interesting one. Without aggregation, the margins are a bit tough, but we still think that there's a lot of things that can be done in that domain. Energy storage, EV, a lot of projects have come our way that is talking about EV structuring, EV charging infrastructure, which is great, but it's about understanding who is going to be eventually using the EV infrastructure and getting the payment back. And vertical farming, I don't think we should be getting our spinach and kale from California. That's what we do right now. So we're trying to get some vertical farms in Ontario so we don't have to go to our US counterparts to get that. So just to wrap up, it's about more win-win-win. Our green bond investors, whether it's individuals or institutions, can get geothermal, GeoExchange projects into the ground and speed up the growth of this industry. And our investors are quite proud to make a CO2 measurable dent and reduction. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, projects, need financing, come and say hi. Thank you.